if the life you've built no longer feels aligned with the life you're meant to live? This week on the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast, I sit down with Marc Scheff for a powerful conversation about reinvention, purpose, entrepreneurship, and having the courage to trust yourself when life is kind of calling you towards something more, something different. Many of us spend years building careers, myself included, businesses and lives that look successful from the outside, yet still find ourselves asking, is this truly where I'm meant to be? Have you ever felt that way? Marc shares insights on navigating change, embracing uncertainty, and taking ownership of the next chapter, even when the path forward isn't necessarily completely clear. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever made a decision that completely changed the direction of your life? You can DM me on Instagram at todaystheday.liveit. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the Today is the Day Changemakers YouTube channel, leave a review, and share it with someone who may need this message today. And if you're looking for more inspiration around courage, growth, and stepping outside of your comfort zone into the center of incredible impact, be sure to check out our new book, Today is the Day, Live It. It's available on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Target.com, and many other online retailers. Because every meaningful change begins with one decision, and every opportunity begins with a connection. Connection is truly the work. I would love to know what you'd like to hear more about on future episodes. Now let's get into a conversation with Marc. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I'm your host, Jodi Hope Grinwald, and as I say, every single episode, I interview the changemakers, the inspirers, and those who are disrupting the status quo in the best way possible. And today I have Marc Scheff with me. Hi, Marc.
Hey Jody, how are you? Nice to see you.
I am great. It's good to see you too. And Marc, before we get started, I'm going to read a little bit about your bio, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Sounds
Marc
great.
Scheff coaches creative directors and artists who are ready to go and grow solo. Marc made this shift successfully more than once. He understands the creative path as an illustrator, fine artist, gallery owner, and nonprofit executive director. He also knows the obstacles that midlife throws at you. Yes, aren't they fun, Marc? They're super fun.
Yeah, I'm still loving them.
Oh yeah, I'm there with you. And he is ready to talk more about how to avoid burnout and how to go solo. And he offers free 15-minute opportunities to have a call with him. And we're going to get into all of that. But before we go to all of the things you offer and the work that you do, so tell me about Marc as a kid. What did Marc want to be when he grew up?
What's funny is my daughter, she's graduating primary school, and they filled out a sheet, with what was your favorite thing and what do you want to be when you grow up. And she wrote almost exactly what I wrote as a kid. I still have a picture of me, which I can maybe even send to you, of me with a T-shirt for Martin Luther King Day. We had to write like I have a dream and then what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I said I wanted to be a cartoonist. My daughter said she wants to be an artist. And I said, please let me help you. But yeah.
Oh my God. All right. So let's talk about that path. So you wanted to be a cartoonist and you were living in the States at the time, right? You were living
I
in
grew up in
you were
Boston. Yep. I grew up in Boston and, just grew up with, I think you probably remember the Sunday funnies. And, I'd read the black and white funnies on the weekdays. I'd find it, and I was obsessed with, Garfield and Family Circus and, all the ones that we grew up with. And and Calvin and Hobbes, obviously. And I love the story and I love the drawings and I love the creativity of it. And there's something about that kind of like storytelling and creativity. Now, obviously, I'm looking back in hindsight and I know that's what it was. But that's what I loved. That's what I loved about, being a kid is being able to explore all of that.
yes, and I remember all of those. They bring back memories.
Yeah.
When we used to get the newspaper years and years ago when it was really thick and people, we looked forward to the Sunday funnies, the Sunday
Yeah.
newspaper way back when. Now everything is on the internet. So you lived in Boston for how long?
I grew up there. I went to college there, and then after college, I left. I went as far as I thought I could go. I went to San Francisco for a tech job. I was a computer science person in addition to being an art person. And then, yeah, story goes, I met a girl, and I moved to New York, and I was there ever since, and just recently moved to London with my family now.
That's incredible. Amazing, amazing. And you said it's sunny there, which is not often, right? It's not
No,
always.
it is sunny here, and I'll be honest with you because that's what we're doing. I think part of especially for creatives, and when I say creatives, I don't necessarily mean like you sit and draw all day. I mean, you're creating, people who are entrepreneurs are creatives. If you're a parent, you're creating, a family, you're creating the rules and values of your fit. Like all of these things are creative. But if you are in that mindset, the long gray winter of London can really be a thing. It is. I grew up in the East Coast. I spent 30 plus years of my life on the maybe 40 years. God, I'm turning 50 this year, and I'm starting to lose starting to lose the thread. But the East Coast, you get weather, you get cold, it comes and goes. But there's something different about how it is in London. It is just a relentless gray for a couple of months. And I bought myself one of these sad lamps, the sunlight lamps. And it's made a real difference for me in my day, spending a little time with that in the morning, feeling like, okay, because sometimes there is no sun, even on a nice day.
Oh,
But we have sun today.
yes.
We have sun today.
That's good. We're celebrating. We're in gratitude. Gratitude is such an important thing, right? It doesn't matter. Even if it's great, you're grateful for your sun lamp. It's just being able to stand in that gratitude. So what brought you to where you are today? Because obviously your career trajectory changed from going to be in, you said tech world and an artist, to where you are now. Let's talk about that transition.
Yeah, I mean the most recent transition, which was from 15 plus 20 plus year career in sort of the arts as an artist and being an executive director and doing those kinds of things. When COVID hit, I think everyone can relate. It was a big pattern interrupt more than anything. The routines that you had were gone. You weren't going to the gym, right? You weren't doing whatever it is you were doing outside, you weren't doing. And there were new routines. So there's this big pattern interrupt. And in my world, that is an opportunity. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't hard. It was actually, I talk about this on various places on my newsletter, but it was one of the really the darkest periods of my life. I was really questioning my worth, what I was doing, and at the time, it's funny, I started going back into just making art as I always did. And my wife was the one who said, you don't have to do that. And I was like, what are you talking about? That's what I do. I'm an artist. Well, I mean, I don't have to do it. She said, well, I really don't think it made you that happy. And I kind of went, oh, okay. So I actually and I was fortunate to have the time. I spent a couple months over that summer doing some coaching work and really looking at, okay, well, what in all the things I've done, tech and art and working in video games, being an illustrator, working with galleries, owning a gallery, all these things. What is the thread? What am I doing? Right?
Mhm.
And this is what I talk about when I say go and grow solo. It was like I've been like a solopreneur, if you will, as an artist and running the things that I run. But this felt really different. This was an opportunity to sort of tie the thread around a lot of different things. And I think, no, I don't think I know because I work with a lot of people who are, in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So this broad midlife swath. And that's kind of the question that a lot of people are facing is, okay, I've done maybe a couple decades of one or two or three different things. Do I want to just go on and kind of do another thing, or do I want to start to look and say, okay, what would be the thing that is a foundation for? Maybe it doesn't look like a foundation. Okay, I worked in tech and I made art and I did this other thing. Like those are all different, but there is a thread. There's a thread for everybody. And for me, it was very much about working with other people. Like when I was making art, I was teaching also, and I was mentoring people. And when I was in tech, I was in the leadership at the companies that I was at. So I had an opportunity to work with people and help them get where they wanted to go. And that wasn't the job, but that was my favorite part of the job. And so when I looked at these very, very different things, and again, through coaching work, was able to say, okay, here's the thread. And then, of course, you have to go, well, who does that? Like, well, who's the person who does just the things that you love to do? And that there were a couple steps along the way, but it led me to coaching.
What kind of coaching?
Specifically, well, I'll be honest with you because I don't think I think a lot of coaches will say I'm an executive leadership coach, I'm a mindset coach, I'm a whatever kind of coach, creative coach. Those are all true. what is also true is that when you go through your coach training, you get a really good foundation of really how to work with anybody. That's just true. You can't go out and say, I work with anybody, because then you don't have a business and nobody comes and you go do something else. But the truth is the foundation of coaching skills, they do work with anybody. I use it with my kids. I use it, when I'm talking to friends sometimes, and not like secretly, like I'll say, let's have a conversation that, can I ask you like a couple of questions that might help. And those tools can really work with anybody. I try not to coach without permission. My wife is definitely like, don't do the coaching thing with me. Um, just fine. You can't coach your family. But
Right.
so what kind of coaching do I do? I would answer that by saying, who do I work with? Because those are the people who I find and who I find success with, and who find success in working with me. And looking back through all the people I've worked with, I've got over 1,000 hours of coaching. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of clients, and if you count the teaching before that, I don't know, I lost count. But the thread there is, they're people who are usually running something, or they're in some sort of leadership position, and they're dying to do their own thing. Like, a lot of times people are in these leadership positions or director positions, and they get to a certain point and they're happy and stable, and it's fine. They're not unhappy. It's not like you come to me because you're very, very sad. That's a therapist thing. But you might come to me and say, like, one client came to me and said, he's like, I could have this job and I could just keep doing this job. I get paid well, it's fine, but I'm starting to feel like I have more ideas than I can do here. And that's the kind of person I work with. When you start feeling like, I have more ideas than I can do from where I am, we should work together, because there is a place that you can go to. I don't know what it is for you, because everyone's different, but there is a place that you can go to where you can have room to expand those ideas.
So it's interesting. You and I have that in common. Yeah,
Yeah.
we talked
Well, I
about
know.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because not everybody understands that, right? Because I know a lot of coaches will say, I work with, women, second career, between the ages of this and that, and the focus is on that. And I, like you, for me, it's everything is related to connection. So anything that has anything to do with connection, because when we feel disconnected in any way in our life, it always ripples
Yeah.
into the other parts of our lives. And so people are like, what does that really mean? And so, they're looking for that really focused in type of coach. But I feel like no matter what, and I know you know this too, you could start talking to somebody about career coaching, and then next thing you find out, they really have another issue over here within their family, or
Always.
right. And
Always.
so that's if my always worry is if we are only in this, trying, only to be in a box, then we only should be staying in the box. But when you don't do that, when you kind of have a little bit more of a broader, like you said, it can't be everyone, but a broader sense, you have an opportunity to help more people. And I think you and I got into coaching for the right reasons, which is to help as many people as we possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, that's when I look back at my career. I mean, it's funny because there's this one conversation that I remember that was really like, in all the things, really stood out to me. And it wasn't, for me, it just seemed like a normal conversation. I was at an event and there was an artist, and she was sort of sitting by herself, and I think I had my art in the show, or what she did too. I don't know. I forget exactly what the circumstances were, but I just went over and was like, seems like something's going on. What's going on? And she opened up and talked a little bit about, like, maybe she was going to quit doing art, and, this was really hard. We just sort of talked things through, and, it was just a conversation. But years later, I followed her work, and she kept doing work, and I was, pleased to see that. And years later, she wrote to me and said that conversation was a turning point. And getting that email, and knowing that I had any part in someone's happiness and success, especially in the creative field, that, I mean, that's gold. And I want, I wanted to do more of that.
And I love that you said that that's gold, because it is. There's something about that moment when you've helped somebody. It's not an
Yeah.
ego thing, right? It's just that feeling of, I'm making a difference. I take up, I have this thing of, we take up space here in this world, and if each one of us makes a difference in some way, what a great world we'd be living in, and not always taking, but being able to give back. In a world where trust drives decisions and relationships matter more than transactions, disconnection is something businesses simply cannot afford. I'm Jodi Hope Grinwald, a leadership and connection strategist, and my work is different because I don't offer just a single framework or surface level fix. I bring an entire ecosystem built on connection with me. I work across leadership, career transition, teams, and client relationships, helping organizations rebuild trust where it may be strained and design their work so disconnection doesn't happen in the first place. Because when one link is off, it affects everything, and sustainable growth depends on keeping those connections strong. To learn more or inquire about me speaking at any of your events, reach out to me at Jodi, Jodi, at todayisthedayliveit.com. What kind of art? We haven't told the listeners what kind of art you do.
Oh, well, last out from the studio, I do. In fact, I have a piece here. I did not plan this. I do have a piece here
No,
though.
I can't wait to see. I love this.
So I would do these. They're portraits, and they're in layers of resin. So you can see on the side that I'll pour different layers and let them cure and then paint on top of each of those layers. It will be a little hard to see, but each of the, features and different like bits of texture, they're all on different layers. So I would do these portraits in layers of resin, and yeah, that's how I spent the last, 6 or 7 years of my art making time.
That's incredible. That is truly, truly, truly incredible. Amazing. I wish I had that. I think we talked about the fact that I do adult paid by number. I share that just because for those of you who want to be artists but really can't be, but you really long for it, do something. And so that's kind of what I do. But I love looking at
Absolutely.
what you're doing. I love that's amazing.
Well,
So
and I mean, and again, I'll be really honest with you because I know that's
mhm,
what people are looking for. They're not looking for the,
yes.
the sort of the Instagram highlight reel. Since since COVID, since going into coaching, since moving to London, I've made a lot less of that. And I don't even have a studio where I can do stuff like that right now. So what I'm doing is I'm finding ways, to be creative, both in my coaching. I've actually gotten into writing a lot more, and, working in my sketchbook when I can sometimes too. But I don't think creativity, it's not necessarily about an outcome or a product. It's a process that you're going through. And I know you mentioned burnout, and the thing that, as soon as you said that, there's research that shows this too. Like burnout has physical symptoms, as well as obviously mental and emotional symptoms. And I was reading the research, and one of the things that really stood out to me is, if you're experiencing burnout, to go do something that is low stakes creative. Paint by number. It's fine. It's fine. Go get a coloring book. I draw with my kid. Just sit down and give yourself that space. It is one of the things that helps you both prevent or recover from burnout, is that sort of, again, low stakes, no outcome kind of creative process. But it could also be gardening, it could be drawing, it could be whatever. But as long as it's not attached to like, okay, I need to get this done kind of mindset, because that's where burnout starts to come back in.
It's true. And I have several started and not all finished of those because I get all excited about these new ones. And then I stopped getting mad at myself for not finishing them because it is supposed to be that thing where you don't have to put the pressure on yourself. That you gotta
Exactly,
have
yeah.
everything else has to, you need to have a beginning, middle, and an end. But I'll end it, and I usually do, but it just takes me time. I have to get back into it. But you talk about you mentioned in your bio about midlife and that you're turning 50, and I've been there, done that a few years already now. Um, and so, what do you feel is so uniquely different about midlife and how people are really may not be prepared necessarily for what it brings?
I don't know that it's easy to say anything that hasn't been said, but being in it, the experience of looking at your life and being able to remember, most of the last 50 years, and knowing that there's about that much left, you start to think like the calendar starts to sort of look different, right? And I think something that happens to people, and where people get stressed out and where coaching really helps, is this kind of perfectionism that can kind of weave its way. I've seen this with a lot of clients where they're like, okay, I need to figure out what my next thing is, or I want to start this project or this company or whatever. And they get stuck in this, like, I need to make sure it goes right. Problem is, you're 40 or 50, you're well aware of all the things that can go wrong. And that's what perfectionism is. It's not perfect people think about perfectionism like, oh, that person's a perfectionist, they always get everything right. No, the perfectionist is the one who doesn't start things because they know all the ways it can go wrong. So that's something that I think people can and should start to look out for is, are you are you automatically sort of discounting the things that you want to do because you know the ways in which they could go wrong? Are you selling yourself short? Are you playing small? Whatever lingo you want to use. Are you doing that? Are you like it? And it's hard to do because it's subconscious. You might not even realize, there's a thing that you thought you might want to do, to take a sabbatical, or, go start a different project or whatever. And I talk to people like all the time about doing this stuff. And it's funny because you mentioned space too. In the space of a coaching conversation, I think one of the things that you and I do is actually provide that space for people. And that sounds very woo-woo, but it's not much more complicated than listening and giving them room to actually say all the things that they need to say. The thing, I've heard this from 50, 60, 70-year-olds. The thing that I've heard the most at the end of a coaching conversation is, wow, I got to say things that I've never really said out loud before. And it's not like they're telling me their deepest, darkest secrets. They're just admitting to the things that they want in their life. Because we start to tell ourselves this story when we're 40, 50, whatever, that this is good and this is what we're allowed to have. And yeah, everyone has different limits on their life. I'm not going to say that, you can do anything. Everyone's got different life circumstances. But I do think we all have choices that we're not making. And that's where I love to explore with people.
That space that when you give a safe space to people and they say those things that they haven't said, they might have said them to themselves, but they sound very different when they come out of the mouth right. They're verbalized as opposed to just thinking them. Same thing with writing, like you talk about the writing, right?
Yeah.
Writing
Yeah.
them, seeing that on a page can also feel very different than just thinking about it. It makes it even more real. So,
Yeah.
so do you have any a story, a coaching situation that you would want to share where, you were able to see someone really move into a space that was just incredible? I always love sharing like success stories of coaching stories so that the people can hear how the transition of through coaching is an incredible experience.
Yeah. I've got a few, and I would say the theme of the people that are coming to mind are people who, um, one was a sort of high level director at their company. One was running their own company. One wanted so let's stick with one. Okay, so this guy's a director, big branding firm, and like I was saying before, was starting to sort of butt up against some of the ideas that he wanted to have were more conscious, and he was realizing that there are things that he wanted to do creatively and also organizationally that he couldn't do because he was at a company and they did things the way that they did. And it wasn't bad. I'm not, not every story is a nightmare, like, oh my God, this is bad. But he just had more ideas than he was dying to execute some of them. What was so interesting is he had a plan. So actually he came to me and I said, okay, so where are you at with this already? What have you done about this so far? It's always good to know where people are, right? And he laid out, he's like, okay, here's my plan, my finances, and I need this much and I can get this much and I think I've got this many. And he had the whole thing. And I kind of went, okay, sounds like you have a plan. Like, why do you need coaching? Right? And it turns out, yes, he had a plan. What he wanted to do was make sure that he'd really explored all the corners of it. And when we did, the plan changed significantly. He did the thing that he wanted to do. The outcome was what he wanted. He created his own agency and he launched it. And he just wrote to me saying that they, you know, blew away their financial projections by like 3x or something. He's very, very happy. I'm always happy when when that happens. And um, and what changed was, there was a way, without getting too like into the weeds, he was going to launch it with with a partner, or he was going to. It's very general, but like he was going to launch it with a partner. And after exploring it and exploring why he wasn't just doing it on his own, what we found was that the reasons why he wasn't doing it on his own were a lot about, sort of the fears and, whatever stories we're telling ourselves about what's possible for us. And when we actually sat down and looked at it, yeah, doing it on your own is a little more risky, but it would also allow him to do the thing that he actually wanted to do, which was to have room for all these ideas. If he had done it this other way, we realized he wasn't going to have as much room. He was going to be more or less in the same position he already was, just with a lot more responsibility and risk. So if he's going to take the risk, he decided to do it. And he's a smart guy. He knows how to mitigate risk. And we did all those things. And it was a very successful launch. In his words, it was a wildly successful launch. So that was great.
That's awesome. And that's the thing, right? So a lot of people years ago when I became a coach, they didn't really understand what that meant. Now you're hearing more and more people are hiring coaches, but you can have a great plan and hold on to that plan for years and never execute, or also have a plan, start executing and realize, well, I don't know. I don't know if this is the way. And that's what we're all here for, is to help guide and provide you whatever we can in support. And what I always find is, people say, oh, there's so many coaches out there, but not everybody is one size fits all for everyone. And that's why the
Sure.
most important thing is to find the one that fits who you are, right? And,
Yeah.
we could both be at a seminar talking and be on a panel, you and I. And to me,
Hmm.
if people walk over to you because they felt that connection to you, then that's a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah.
That's
I refer people to other coaches all the time. So you mentioned I do my free call, and I have a free 15-minute call. It's free. I don't try to sell you on anything. I want to find out what you need. And I don't know how many, like some of those calls I say, you know what, you should go talk to Jodi. Like I think that's a really good fit for you. And I'd rather do that because it builds trust. If I convince someone to work with me when I know it's not really a great fit, that's not going to go well. I mean, it's just not, you're not going to get the results that you want. And then you're going to have someone out there who's like, I regret working with that guy. Like, you don't want that, right? It's funny. Like, I was telling somebody this story yesterday. I was working with a coach for a couple of years, really loved her, Jamie Broderick. She's a business coach. Um, and I found her because I was interviewing these other coaches and I found one and I liked her. And I said, okay, I want to work with you. And she took a couple of days, wrote back, and she said, listen, I'd love to work with you. If you want to do that, that's fine. But after talking to you, I think that you'd be a better fit for this. You should talk to this other lady, this lady Jamie. And I had a great relationship. I ended up having a really great experience with Jamie. And so, and I appreciate that coach for that referral. And that's how I operate. When I have these calls, it's not for me to sort of convince you or see how, like, try to manufacture a fit. I want to find out what you need. And if I can help you do that by sending you to someone else, all the better.
Yeah. And I love that, Mark. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything, well, first of all, how do people find you? That's very important.
Very easy. My website is my name, markscheff.com, marcscheff.com.
And before we go, last question. What's next for Mark?
What's next for Mark? Well, as I was telling you before the call, what's next for me is getting on a plane because I'm going to celebrate. Yeah, a bunch of us are turning 50 this year, and so a bunch of us are getting together for a little getaway trip, which it's hard to take time off when, especially when you're sort of making your own life. But I've committed to it. I've booked no clients, blocked out my calendar. So I'm excited for that. I'm going to use that as a reset. But what's next for me professionally? I'm running a retreat in May. That's going to be a week-long retreat, a big creative reset. We're going to walk people through both a letting go and a reset and a sort of rebuilding of how they want to re-enter the world. That's in May. That is also full right now, so I'm just telling you about it. No one can sign up for it. Um, and yeah, I'll be opening up coaching spots over the summer, and looking for folks. If folks are listening to this and they think, yeah, that guy seems nice, I have a free call. It's on my website, and I'd love to find people who, like I said, who are in that space where they feel like they have more ideas than they can currently be executing in whatever environment they are. Maybe that's work, maybe that's home, but they have ideas and they want to figure out how to bring them to life.
I love that. And I typically, if I bring a coach on, I only do it because I feel like the way they do the work is similar to the heart of how I do mine as well. Because I feel like heart-centered coaches are
Hmm.
so important. to find those who really want to see those incredible outcomes and feel connected
Yeah,
to their clients. So, honestly, I hope we get to work together as well, and have you part of the forum when we have the forum in the fall. And
I do too.
any other things that you want to share before we go?
Well, I just appreciate you bringing me on here. I know you're a coach too, and giving another coach a platform can, I think a lot of people will be like, why would you do that? Like, aren't you supposed to be just blasting your own thing? But I think what you're creating is really, I think it's how these things should be done. The whole, rising tide raises all the boats kind of thing. And I think the way and I appreciate it and I'm honored by, what you just said about heart-centered coaching, the way you're bringing people on who are aligned with the way that you coach and aligned with the way you see the world. I think it's yeah, I think it's a good thing, and I'm pleased to be here, and I'm looking forward to the forum.
Yes, me too, me too. And that's the thing. It's like creating a community, right? To me, you create an ecosystem. When you can create an ecosystem surrounded by people who are like-minded, who care about the space we take up here and making a difference. I mean, I've been very lucky and blessed, and I love being able to help people connect. And now most of them are off doing work together too. So, which is great. And you'll be able to become part of the Today's the Day family. So, welcome. We're happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'm grateful that we met. And I just want to let everybody know too, before you forget, my book, Live It, is out with several different authors that we're really sharing about leadership, resiliency, courage, connection. And it is a great opportunity to just listen to different stories about how people sat at the edge of their comfort zone and decided to take that first step forward. And like Mark said, sometimes there's so many steps you want to take forward and you don't know how to make them all happen. I call that, not my word, I'm borrowing it from someone else, a multi-potentialite, and Mark works with them. I work with them, and people have a lot of potential, more than just one thing. People like to do lots of different things to keep themselves busy. So thanks, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jody. It was a pleasure being here.
And one more time, website.
markchef.com.
Awesome. Are you also on LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's all on my website. You can find me. Yeah, it's all
Perfect.
there. Yeah.
Find Mark everywhere. Sounds like a plan. And I'm going to say what I say at the end of every podcast. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So, what small or large step are you going to take today to get yourself closer to your goals? Have a great week, everyone. Thanks again, Mark.
See you later.